All right, so welcome to how to easily find incentives for your next residential green building project. This course is brought to you by the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I am the education manager here at GHI. Now, before we get started, we wanted to let you know all about our new resource page. Um, and so at our website, greenhomeinstitute.org, we've launched our new resources page. On that page, you're going to find a lot of different things. Find a Pro, which has a huge list of professionals who can help you out. And it's got all sorts of other resources like the do-it-yourself home energy score assessment, our Green Star checklist, our green home inspection services, and then various things that don't belong to us, but that we thought might be helpful to you, like heat pump installation guidelines, durability risk assessments, indoor air quality assessment tools, electrification tools, and you name it. We've already went over quite a bit of these before in the past through educational webinars that you've attended or might want to catch. And we're going to be doing more sessions on more of these as well. But make sure to bookmark and link back to that resources page, um, as it may be beneficial for you as well. And so, what we want to focus on today is specifically our financial resources. And that's what we're going to be looking at here on this page. It's the second one down. And so I will share that link with you. But these are our financial resources, including incentives, rebates, tax credits, loans, and you name it. And there's a couple different things here. The first one is if you click Access the General Financial Resources on our website, it's going to take you to this downloadable list that we're keeping up to date constantly that we have sorted here by various different residential green building resources. There are a lot of local ones in the West Michigan area and Michigan just because we got grant funding to work on this in that particular area. But there's also national and other regional incentives. So you can go through this list. We keep it updated with all of these resources. And the intention here is that you can, pick two, three, four, five of these resources that you can use on your project. And you can sort them, download it, sort this list, and say, yep, I'm going to use these three, four, five different resources. And that gives you the braided funding, the dollars you need. We know that in order to do green building, in order to do renovating our millions of existing homes, our housing stock, to build new homes to net zero and our Green Star Platinum or LEED Platinum standards or Passive House, we need A plus B plus C plus D resource to do it. We've got to get multiple resources in to come in because it does cost more to do these things in many cases, not all cases. So that's our goal, is to find you these stackable, funded, braided funding resources. But what's new and exciting is that we've also added two special tools here, one for multifamily and mixed use, and even those of you doing commercial, and then single family. These are specialized reports that you'll be able to actually put in your address, your project address, or maybe a building you're going to buy, and get a customized report specific to you instead of an overarching general resource. So that's something new we've got. So actually using both of these together, we think you'll be able to find many of the resources you need to help move forward. And that's why I'm super excited to have our speaker on today. But again, before we get to our speaker, I do want to say a big shout out to our session sponsor here, Panasonic Ventilation. They offer all the solutions for healthier home needs, from supply only all the way up to demand controlled energy recovery ventilation and everything in between. I've been using Panasonic personally, where I have lived now for over a decade, to keep air fresh and healthy. Energy Star certified inline fans or exhaust fans to meet baseline ventilation requirements, or set up continuous intermittent exhaust to comply with various standards. Energy recovery ventilators ranging from 20 to 200 CFM, decentral or central systems that work in cold climates and help keep the best balanced air solutions. These can also be paired with demand-controlled air quality sensors, so they only ramp up when there's pollution or bad air quality detected in your home or unit or building, and then run lower, saving energy when it's not needed. So go to greenhomeinstitute.org/Panasonic ventilation to learn more. So other than that, I'm going to hand it off to our speaker here today, Ben Northrup with Incentifine, and he's going to take you through, how to access these special customization reports to find those incentives. So Ben, glad you could join us. Welcome, and please take it away.
Hey, Brett, I appreciate it, and thanks for having us on today. We really appreciate the Green Home Institute for helping us spread the word about incentives. So thank you for that. And actually, on the Panasonic note there, I actually also have a Panasonic ERV in my house. So it's great to see you guys are promoting those products. They are fantastic as well. So yeah, I'll jump right into it. So let me share my presentation here. See if I can take over the screen. All right. So what I'd like to share today is the organization that we have is called Incentifine, and just by its name itself, hopefully you can kind of understand the concept of what we've created for Incentifine. So really, what we have is we created an incentive resource so that it makes it very easy for people to go in and locate incentives for their projects. So we call us the go-to database for green building incentives, and that could be from commercial to residential. A variety of different people that we have on the call today could utilize this. A lot of times what we see too is people get curious and they go, hey, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pull my home. I'm just curious, does my house qualify for incentives? And in many cases it does. And so we've provided that resource so people could go look for that. So let me kind of tell you a little bit about my personal background. So I am a Texas A&M grad, mechanical engineering by degree, and then also got an MBA there. And then when I got into the industry, I actually jumped into the sales side. So I've actually been into commercial business to business sales for over the past 20 years. Most of that has been focused on the manufacturing industry. So I've gone into anything from shipbuilding to aerospace to industrial, medical device, a lot of different fun things within the manufacturing industry. And then on a personal side note, I started getting into real estate investment just as I grew and kind of saw the capabilities and the opportunity there. As I've grown with that, I was able to connect with the founders of Incentifine, and I thought it'd be a good fit. So I've joined in as a part of their sales team. So a little bit of background about myself, and I'll kind of jump into the company here. So, what is incentives really? What we're trying to do is find that cash to put back in people's pockets, and so that's kind of what we're shedding light on the cash that's available. There is a lot of funds available to people, and there are a lot that's left on the table every single year. So what we're trying to do is we tried to build a database that pulls from multiple other sources to provide that easy access so that more people can utilize these funds. I don't know many people that wouldn't say, hey, if you could put cash in my pocket, that's okay. I've got enough of it, right? So what we're trying to do is make that process very simple. So as a part of that, where we really started is the founder that she had a history of working for a large civil firm in the U.S., traveled the globe, but part of what her job role entailed was going in and looking for these incentives. And to do that currently in the ecosystem we have, you have to go to a lot of different sources to try to find those, whether it's through the federal government, through its the county or city, or number of different sources where you're trying to look and say, hey, are there any incentives available for my project? So right now, as you've seen, as building codes have standards have increased, and the journey for trying to become more green or more reduce our carbon emissions, we've tried to build better projects. So 50% of the homes, as you see here, are over 40 years old. There's over 125 million single family homes in the US, 5.9. So these are US statistics, 5.9 million commercial buildings. And so with that, and these aging homes, these aging buildings, plus on top of that new construction, what are the other issues that compound these factors, right? As we've seen lately, increasing interest rates, material costs over the past few years have just really gone up. Energy costs are increasing, and depending on where you live, those are increasing significantly more than other locations. Cost of labor has significantly increased, and then obviously we've seen a number of natural disasters, even as of real recent times, that have really impacted a lot of people. So the other issue that I've seen, and where we're saying, hey, let's find the cash that's on the table. There's over $35 billion in unused incentives every single year, right? So what we're trying to do is make that process easy so that people can come and find those. The government is providing those funds and people just aren't utilizing them. So how do we get access to those funds? So there's kind of a good layout of the problem. So the solution, and this kind of lays out really the landscape of what the current process looks like. So of that 35 billion that's left on the table, that's about half of the 70 billion offered each year in the US. And these are the different types that we can do. So if you kind of go from left to right, we offer different types of incentives. There's federal, state, county, city, utility incentives, right? So if you got to imagine, you have to go to each of these local sites. And if you are building in multiple regions, right? If you're building in Chicago and then you're building in Atlanta and then you're building in, Denver, Colorado, well, you've got to be familiar with all the different regulations and sites within those different regions that you're building in. So that could be very numerous sites that you have to go and do a lot of research, people spending their time doing that. The types of incentives you're trying to find could be tax rebates or incentives. There could be grants, fee waivers, rebates themselves, bill credits, loan programs. So there's a lot of different types you have to become familiar with and know how to search for those. Incentive categories that we are specifically focused on are going to be more of those green incentives. There are a lot of other types of incentives available. We focus on the green side. So whether that's energy efficiency, renewables, water conservation, and then there's our others that are available. So we do focus on some of these, including anything from like EV charging stations. There are opportunity zones. I myself live in Houston, and we have different opportunity zones that if we go in and renovate or do new construction in a certain area, there are incentives that are provided by the local municipalities to do that. And then applicable to, I already kind of mentioned this, we work anything from commercial to residential side. We do, a lot of people ask, hey, do you do new construction and existing buildings? Yes, anybody that's trying to go in and try to improve, build a new building or improve an existing building to make it more energy efficient. That's really where we're focused. Now, in some aspects, even the tenants can come in. There are a lot of times if tenants are responsible for the utilities, and they go in and make an improvement that makes a facility more energy efficient, a lot of times those tenants can also be credited with some of these rebates or incentives. So quick poll, and I think Brett can send this out. I was kind of curious to see if we could send a poll out and find out how many of you have actually applied for an incentive, and he can issue that now.
Yep. Do you see it now?
Yep.
Great.
Perfect. So I'll give a minute while people answer that, and then it might be a good time too if anybody has any questions to either submit that to the chat or whatever's most convenient.
All right. It looks like a majority is filled out for now.
All right. Let me see if I can get this.
You see that?
All right. So we're looking at the results here. It looks like we got a relatively good 50-50 split. So it looks like and that's pretty close. 17 out of the 36 that answered said no or yes, they have used incentives, and 19 said no. So actually a pretty good split in the room. That's good to see. Good. So a continued follow-up, which we hadn't followed up on here, is something to consider and something we're going to talk about is the process to actually go in and capture those incentives. So I'll hop back into my presentation. But it's not, let's see if it's sharing here. I don't know if it's allowing me to share. I wonder if because you did that, it's not swapping back over to me. Give me a second here.
How about now?
Still not doing it. Let me see if I can grab a different
Yeah,
window here.
I think whatever you have that says poll, is that part of your slide?
That's just a slide that I have. Is that showing?
Yeah, it's showing. Yeah, yep, you're good.
Oh,
So
okay.
keep on
Then
going.
I was just in, I swapped screens. I guess the poll showed up on my
Yep.
side, so I apologize. That have done incentives, I would be kind of curious to see what that process felt like for you. So what we have found in most uh, uh, companies that have gone in and tried to do those incentives, it does result in a lot of wasted time and wasted money. I know when I personally went in and looked at some of the opportunity zones and what the amount of paperwork and just the level of research that you had to go do to apply to some of these incentives, it's very overwhelming. And if you don't do certain steps appropriately, it's very easy to kind of get kicked out of that incentive and just lose it altogether. So that really what we have found is as not only going in the searching process to go locate the incentives, but actually in the application process of trying to apply for those incentives, it can be very overwhelming and a lot of wasted time and money left on the table. So our process here and kind of what our solution has been is we provided a database where you can go in and find all of your incentives in one location. We also have the ability, if you want, to allow us to apply for those incentives and for your project. And what that does is makes a very simple one-stop shop where, in essence, we can put money back in your budget, back in your project, and faster ROI for these projects that you're focused on. Makes it a very, very simple solution. So we already kind of addressed this, but what we try to focus on here is that if you're either new construction and or renovating an existing project, the earlier you can kind of plan for incentives, typically the better. And I say that because there's different types of how you can capture incentives. So if you're going and putting in a new boiler, you're putting in an HVAC system, a lot of that will be focused on, well, what is the actual energy savings? And the amount that you get back or the rebates applied typically will be based on that level of energy savings. So if you're in the design phase and you can say, hey, all right, well, if we put better insulation and we save more energy, or we put a more efficient boiler in, or if we can plan for that, what is the ROI on that? Do we get significantly more savings put back in our project? Is that already something we were considering, but because of the additional cost, we had kind of pulled back? And so now there's an incentive to encourage you to go ahead and move forward with being more energy efficient, right? So the earlier we can get into that pre-design or that design phase, typically then you can evaluate the incentives and really get the most bang for your buck out of those. Right. So we can do those further along in the construction projects, but obviously the earlier the better, so you can plan for those. So we'd already kind of talked about this, making this an easy process, user friendly. So we'll hop into what this actually looks like on our site here in a few minutes. We'll kind of walk you through the process, but really, again, we try to focus on user friendly data, something that's easy to consume. And easy to follow the process to really achieve the end result of putting money back into your project. I had mentioned the apply services. So here's some interesting facts that we have on this. So, over 50% of property owners that try to utilize incentives or go through application find that it's very lengthy, tedious, and you don't, a lot of times you either end up giving up or you don't fill out the paperwork properly. There's a lot of issues that can go along the process, and there's a lot of deadlines to be met. If you don't meet these deadlines, that very quickly kicks you out of the incentive process. So we provide a team of people that do this on a regular basis. This is their full-time job. And essentially what they do is they can take your project, they can look through the report, they can say, okay, what are you focused on from a property owner? What projects do you want to do? Here's a report. They'll go through that with you. They can help you fill out the paperwork. They can get your project details. They can apply for that. And then they monitor. They say, okay, where are we at in the process of actually doing these upgrades or this new construction? They can go ahead and make sure that we're meeting all the deadlines there. They can provide updates. And then once everything's completed, they go in and make sure that we receive the funding for completion of the project. So they make a very nice, smooth workflow for the end customer. All right, so here's kind of some examples of what those project timelines can look like. So we talked about the pre-design or the design phase. those are really the ideal times for us to get involved. So that way we can capture the most. We can get involved in the pre-construction or even sometimes during the construction phase. But that's kind of getting towards the end of where we really, like to see the application push through to make sure that you can get the rebates back. So just some examples of some customers that we've helped. You can see a pretty broad list here. So we have anywhere from very, very large organizations, to companies that handle, hospitality. You see Marriott, Hilton on here. We like to handle a very, very broad spectrum from anybody that's doing just a small, few projects a year, to companies that manage portfolios of projects for other companies. We work with a lot of intermediaries like different prop tech companies, different brokerages or lending agencies, because really the goal for us is just to really get the word out and provide easy access to this data, so that we can start taking advantage of the funds that are already on the table. So what I'd like to do now is I can kind of walk through some examples that we have of people that have gone through and been successful in capturing these. So I think a lot of people, the questions that we get are, well, okay, this sounds great, but really, what are the funds available to my particular applications, right? Where do you typically focus on these? Is it really, really large, or are they small projects? Well, it can it can range from a wide variety. So what you see here, I'll walk through a few examples. So in this particular example in Baytown, Texas, which is where, we're headquartered in Houston, there's a warehouse building. So at the top right of this, what you're going to see is the kind of a summary here. So on top of the savings that they were able to capture in a pure cash reimbursement, they were also able to capture significant energy savings, which is going to kind of continue ROI down the road. So if you look at total energy savings annually, they're saving 25% versus a traditional build, right? That include on top of that, they got $150,000 in a one-time cash reimbursement based on these incentives. So they had done a total project cost of about $2.2 million. And so the 150,000 was just a quick cash reimbursement or ROI on that, but really the advantage is the long-term savings from being more focused on green energy. So this is kind of an example of some of the use cases we have. You can see on the left-hand side, they also received they have options for additional tax incentives. So what you see is there is what we call a total soft estimate. And that's something that as we get into the what we produce here, we'll show you what that soft estimate entails, and then kind of where you ultimately get from the cash incentives that you can capture. So another one would be an industrial building here. We have an existing building that was retrofitted. So you can see on the top right, cost of equipment, a little over $1 million. Smaller kind of one-time cash reimbursement on this project. But they had a much smaller scope. They weren't going in and kind of renovating the whole building. They had a small scope, but we're still able to capture a significant amount of savings on that. And again, we handle a lot of these projects. So they have a one-time fee of going in and capturing, of getting the report, and they can either have a team of people that, does this service for themselves and files the applications, or they can have our team go in and capture that for them. Another multifamily, that's a pretty popular one. We get a lot of people that request multifamily reports. So in this particular case out of St. Louis, it was a 151 unit building, right? So you can see again on the top right, cost of equipment, $287,000. They still got $23,000 and a cash reimbursement and some savings on there. So you can see the annual energy savings that they are reducing on there. Private education facility, we actually get significant requests for doing private education. Again, cost of equipment here. So we're seeing kind of a rough, in these examples that I'm showing, initial cash reimbursement of about 10% back on their projects, which is pretty significant returns, right? So 68,000 in savings are here. And look at that total energy savings annually, 48% energy savings on there. Boiler thermal efficiency of 82%. Just pretty wild, the amount of savings they're going to receive long-term by becoming more energy efficient on top of the initial one-time investment reimbursement. Private medical office here again, kind of another quick example. Cost of equipment, $64,000. um, pretty high, pretty high return on the one-time cash return of 42,000. It nearly covered the entire cost of their equipment. So in some cases, it becomes a very big no-brainer to say, look, I can have a very fast ROI on these projects to get some of these projects done. Hospitality. So we mentioned a lot of different hotel chains that we work with. We have majority of the top hotel chains within the country. So in this particular case, cost of equipment was roughly $9 million and 56,000 in reimbursement there. All right, so that's some of the use cases I have. Before I hop into kind of the live demonstration, I did want to see if there were any other questions that had popped up. Might be a good time to answer some of those and see what we can do to as I transition over to the live portion.
Yeah, so you mentioned it's a better idea to get involved in the preliminary pre-construction plan review process, right? Because that makes sense because I think obviously people are making those decisions. The incentives are perhaps tipping the scales on the decisions they make. But the question came here was, is there still a way you can get involved in the post-construction in the event that someone wants to go, hey, is there something we did that we may be eligible for and that we should claim based on what we've already done?
So in some cases, we do provide some of this on our reports. Is there are some tax rebates and tax incentives that you can get. And so what we do is we can actually walk through some of those. So there are some that you can go in and say, hey, I did this past year. Now, if it's years past, that might be a lot more difficult to go in and say, hey, I did this 5 years ago. But if it's something you did in current year and you just finished up and you haven't filed the tax and stuff on that, you can go in and say, hey, look, what are the energy savings that I've achieved? So I can walk through some of those tax programs. A lot of times though, for applying for rebates, that is a good question. I'd probably have to lean back on some of the other project teams to see if there are any that were kind of post projects that we could go back in and capture. I would say most of the time that's not the case because you do need to apply to say, hey, they have to approve that, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. But there are some cases that you can go in and get those.
Mm-hmm. And then another question came in here. Is that maybe you can just get a sense, and maybe the answer is it depends on your location, right? But they were saying, what is typically more available? Is it grants, loans, low interest loans, fee abatements, fee waivers? I'll even throw in utility incentives. Like, what is it that you're typically seeing being the most popular incentive type, or is that very subjective to location?
Right. So no, that's a great question. And so what we're seeing is we're attracting all sorts of people across the variety of industries. So like on the commercial sector, we're even attracting people that actually go in and do these installations. So whether that's HVAC installations, boiler installations, because what they're doing is now they're going in and they're trying to provide additional value for their clients. So they're coming in and saying, look, I'll go ahead and pull the report because I know I've been successful in achieving some of these. And so they'll say, look, I'm focused on HVAC. I know what the process is like. I'll go ahead and pull the report for the owner and I'll say, hey, this HVAC installation is going to cost you X amount. I know I can get you some incentives. I'll include that as a part of my process, right? So we're even seeing it from that side of the organization because they know this is becoming very successful. So as far as a variety, that you can get into this, it does vary by location and in a lot of cases by state. So because there are state incentives, right? If you're in maybe a Colorado versus a Texas, there might be additional incentives there. A lot of times we do see though, people are interested in that kind of cash incentive. And a lot of times that's rebates, right? From utilities. Utilities are going in and saying, hey, if you make your, install this solar system, right? Or if you install this EV charging station, right? Those could be federal incentives or state incentives, right? In some cases, utility incentives are also providing some of that. So it is a very big variety, and that's really what caused us to create this database because it is really a chore to go in. And I know, like down in Houston, our utilities are decentralized or deregulated, right? So I don't just have one utility that I can go to. Now I have one utility that supplies to my house, but I may look at and say, well, if I switch utilities, this other utility has a different program. and I may want to go put solar panels on my house, and now they're incentivizing me to do that. I'm going to switch utilities, and then I can capture that rebate from them, right? So we have a lot more options. So I may have to go look at 10 different utility websites and try to look at those versus just the one that I may have in other locations. So that is a good question. It does vary by location quite a bit. But I would say in general, we try to focus on a lot of these different rebates because that's direct cash being put in the pocket of the owners.
Mhm, mhm. Um, uh, so okay, the question here is, what services do you charge for? Is this just the apply services, or do you charge for access to the database?
No, that's a great question. And so we'll hop into that in the demo, but I can go ahead and
Yeah.
answer that since we're here. So one nice thing is that the Green Home Institute he showed you kind of that shared landing page. So the nice thing is that if you are a member of Green Home Institute, you do get a discount, but we do charge up front for the report. And we do that because there's really two ways that we kind of help our clients. One is just compiling the data and saying, hey, here's a nice report that can help you. So whether you're a homeowner or you're a commercial builder or variety in the industry as we've discussed, you can go in and simply pull that report and you can get value from that and go do these applications yourself. So we do capture a fee associated with just having the report. If it's something where you're like, hey, I pull many reports a year, I have all these projects and these different varieties of locations I'm doing. Maybe I'm managing a portfolio for companies, as I kind of mentioned earlier, or maybe I'm in hospitality and I have 100 hotels that I'm going to go in and do renovation over the next couple of years. Then we do have programs that if you're going to be doing that on a regular basis, we make it a lot more cost effective, so you're not going in and paying for each individual report necessarily. We give you more of a buffet style type program where it gives us more of a subscription base where you subscribe to our service, and then you can pull multiple reports from that regard. So if you are in that type of scenario, then we can give you a better pricing function for those reports. But if it's in some cases, we have people say, look, I just want to pull it on my house. Well, there's a one-time fee. The nice thing is once you pull that report is good for a full year. So if any new incentives come out over the next year, then you will have access to those new incentives. So we only charge you that one time and you have it for the next year.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you gave a lot of examples. Our audience here is primarily in the residential sector. So maybe you can walk us through something that's, more specific to multifamily and single family, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. And I didn't get to I forgot to mention the apply services. So the apply services is on a success fee basis. So what we do with that is when you send us a report, we're going to apply to the different incentives that you've chosen and the projects that you want to work on. And then we follow those projects and make sure that they go to fruition. But we only take, we have a percentage that we take from the successful incentives that you get. So we don't charge you up front for that. That way we make sure that we're giving you the best service possible. So once you actually get that money back and the ones that we actually acquire, then we will take a portion of that. There's a small fee that we take out of that from there. All right, so what I'll do is I will share kind of the process here so everybody can kind of take a look. So the nice thing is as we've mentioned, you can go to the Green Home Institute website. You can go to the financial resources, and there are these three buttons that Brett had mentioned. So these lower two portions are going to focus on what we provided here. So you do have what we call the commercial side. So that could be multifamily. Commercial is anything but you going in and pulling in and saying, hey, I own my own house, or a single family residence is where we go into the residential side. So on the single family residence is really where we capture here. And then everything else is kind of really what we call commercial, right? So if you're looking at multifamily, you can click there. So once you click that, that's going to take you to a new site. That site here, again, you'll see the Green Home Institute, and you can go in and type what you're looking for. So we call this a quick summary because we don't charge for this, right? So this is actually free to go in and see, hey, in general, what is there? So I went and picked a location. I just went and found something online. I found a multifamily that is for sale in the Chicago area. So I'm going to go in and type my information here. Now here is a variety. So we do like to kind of cater the report to the type of building that you're looking for. So you can see we've got a lot of different types of facilities here, right? Master plan communities, multifamily, mixed use, office, private education. So I've showed some of these examples here. right? I do have requests for houses of worship. There's a huge variety that you get here. So I'm going to go in and say, hey, I know I'm going to do a commercial multifamily. I can say I'm the business owner, I'm a service provider, right? Then I'm going to go in and start typing an address. The nice thing is we did connect this to maps. So if I go in and just start typing an address, I can say I'm on South Shore Drive. So this is a place I had picked in Chicago. So I can go in and say, yep, that's the location I have. Let me go ahead and input my email address and hit start saving now. That's going to take me to this quick summary. So it does take a second to process. It's going to put that information in, go search the database. And what that's doing is that's looking at that specific location and it's compiling the information that's relevant to that area. So that's also going to look at utilities that are there and whatnot. Now, as a general practice, we do have this soft estimate, and that is something that we're trying to better refine. Right now, it's not the most accurate. Again, it's just pulling in a general sense. If you had a multifamily in this area, and you can actually see here, based on the square footage, it's basing on a 10,000 square foot. You may say, look, I'm looking at a 60,000 square foot multifamily. Well, then that means that this soft estimate is not even going to be anywhere near accurate that you can achieve on a much larger facility size. Now it is going to go ahead and pull the address, and really what we're focusing on from a utility perspective is we really look at the county, and that's going to be important because as I scroll down and show you the utilities, a lot of the utility websites, as you go search them, really do have utilities based on the county that you're in. And until you actually go in and specify which utility provider you're using, then it's going to narrow that even further. So there might be multiple utility providers, as I talked about in Houston, that provide air for my county. And that's where I'm going to have to go in and kind of filter that data. So as I scroll down, this is going to be, again, this is just a quick story. It's going to say, hey, we've got some rebates, tax incentives and whatnot. So it'll say, hey, renewables, we found 19 incentives available. Energy efficiency, we found 51, uncategorized 41. So it's saying, yep, we have rebates. Water conservation, we have rebates available for that area, right? Do you want to go through and start pulling a more accurate report is what we call the verify report. So a verify report is going to be very specific. It's going to go in and say, okay, now that I know this address, instead of just kind of giving me a general, yes, there are incentives available, I want to see what they are. Well, this is the area where if I hit up here at the top right and I say generate report, that is going to ask for a pay screen, and that is where we're going to go in and say, hey, we do charge for this report. So a lot of people ask, well, how much is that report? For single family residents, we charge $25 for that report. And then for commercial, we charge $500 for that report. That is our list price. And again, for pulling one single report at a time, that's kind of the most that you would pay. If you are a member of Green Home Institute, then you will get a discount on that. They do have a code that you can apply to give you a discount. And then if you do say, hey, look, I'm going to be pulling, 20 of these or 50 of these reports a year, then definitely contact us. We have some better programs available that would be more suitable for your specific scenario. So once I'm in and I generate the report, this is what your report's going to look like. So again, it's going to come in here. So now instead of just showing a summary, we're actually going to show you the detailed information. So here's the 82 incentives that we have for this. And now I can scroll through them. So if you look at the left-hand side, it's going to say, where are these incentives from? So all these first ones are the utility incentives. As I scroll down, then I'm going to get into city, I'm going to get into county, state, and then federal will be the final one. And then I apologize for the scrolling. If I get back up to the top here, then I'm going to have the different categories that they fit within, right? So I've got rebates. So this gets back to, kind of somebody asking that question earlier. Do you normally see rebates or tax incentives or grants, or where do they fall in? This will actually show you kind of where those incentives categorize in. Then it's like, hey, what type of green incentive is this, right? So water conservation, renewable, energy efficiency, are they other, which would be maybe EV charging stations, those types of things. Where do they fit within this incentive program? The other thing that we're adding onto this, so we are going to expand this here in the near future. So I'd say by early 2025, we're going to have the ability to come up here and say, okay, you know what? I'm focused on doing HVAC, or I'm focused on replacing a boiler, or I'm focused on, adding an EV charging station. And you can check whichever boxes you're focused on. And then what it'll do is it'll go in and go ahead and filter this report without you having to go and read what are these 82 incentives. Just go ahead and narrow that down to what I specifically want to do with my project. right? So the other advantage we have is once you're in this report, other than just telling you what type of incentive you have, it'll walk you through all of the details. So this is really where the power of this database comes in and saves you a fortune of time of going and doing all this research. So let's just start with this first one here, right? Electrical vehicle rebate, right? Or you can, in this case, it went and looked and say, hey, do we have any energy efficiency? It said, no, we don't have one in there. We don't have one there. Or we have an HVAC discount program for new construction, right? So maybe we click on that, or standard indoor lighting incentives. That's always a fun one to go see. So that's a ComEd. These are utility incentives. So I can say indoor lighting. What is that? It's going to scroll down and say, hey, you know what? I want to see the details. Show me the details. This will walk you through the scope, right? Pre-application. So that answers someone's question there. It does say pre-application is required in this case. So you can't do this post-project. You do have to be approved for this, meaning you have to submit a scope. It's going to say, hey, the funds vary by project, but it's going to tell you, hey, what do you get? All right, well, if you're putting in LED bulbs, you get 75% per watt reduced. So this is going to require some calculation on your part, going in and looking at those project details and say, what am I going to get? So this also goes back to kind of where we look at that soft estimate, and that soft estimate can be very inaccurate because we don't know at this point in time the size of your project, the scope of your project, and how to go in and apply. Where are you going to fit within the amount of bulbs that you're going to replace or the energy efficiency that you're going to improve? That's why that soft estimate can definitely vary quite a bit. So here's kind of how that could be prescriptive, if you can see that, to go in and look at these. It also then takes you into next steps, right? How do I go in and apply for this? You know, where do I go? So we've got the online link here to go directly to the ComEd application. It's going to tell you the items that you need to fill out for those and all the requirements there. So we try to be as detailed as possible so that you can go in and fill these out. So I can go back to the top here and go in and look for other incentives, right? So as I scroll through, so maybe we'll go down and see if there's maybe a federal incentive, right? So I mentioned qualified opportunity zones earlier, right? You know, small wind turbines, solar water heaters, heat pumps, right? So if you say, okay, I'm going to do a geothermal heat pump, or, you know, solar panels is always a big one. Here's a tax credit, right? So I want to look at what are the requirements from the IRS to go get this tax credit. So if I click on that, I can go in here again, go look at the scope, and this is going to tell me that if I install these, so this could be, see if this is going to be post. See, this could be a post project, existing homes and new construction, right? I can go in and say that following tax amounts apply. So if I put those panels in within these time frames, here's the amount of credit I can get back by installing those panels, right? So if I were to go put anything in currently from 2021 to 2033, I can get up to 30% back on those panels. Okay, and then here's the tax form that I would need to apply there, right? Someone did ask about another tax form for energy efficiency. Let me see if I can quickly go find this. It's a common one that we get asked. Let's see. Here's EV. I don't see it on this particular program, but there are quite a few different tax programs available. Here it is, 179D. Right. So this particular tax program is based on the amount of energy efficiency that you improve, right, on your system. So this will go in and say, hey, if I can improve a number of different things, whether it's lighting, heating, cooling, ventilation, right? And if I improve a variety of these, I need to, as a total, it's going to say here, here's the energy savings, right? I need to achieve a 25% energy savings across the square footage of my building, and then I will qualify. So that's the minimum. But that 25% can be achieved through a variety of projects. That can be achieved through doing HVAC, through lighting, through whatever that is. And then this provides significant tax savings that you can get. So you can look at the amount per square foot that you can start doing that. And that can really add up. So hopefully that answers some of the questions on some of the tax rebates and doing that post project.
Yeah, great. Thanks. You know, another one of the questions that came in, Ben, is just how this compares to the DSIRE website. So I think it's DSIRE Are you familiar with that? And how is this comparing to that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular website, but there are some competing, I would say relatively competing websites that are out there.
Hmm.
Typically what we found is a lot of those websites are very narrowly focused on a very specific section of the market, right? So some of them may be focused on just electrification, right? There are some electrification websites out there that's really where they focus, and they go pull information just from some very narrow websites. We have the most broad spectrum database that's available that goes and pulls again from utilities, goes or pulls from county, state, federal, and it's not narrowly focused on a specific task you're doing. So in some cases, if you're like, hey, look, all I focus on is electrification projects, maybe that is the best source for you. What we have found though is even people that pull from those, they do find other projects that they can get into from our site. And we also have we have project teams that on a regular basis going in and adding and searching for new incentives that are available in the market. Right. So that's really a big advantage that we provide, is having these teams that are regularly searching databases and making sure that our database is up to date and one of the most up to date that's available in the market.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say I've used, just to help answer the question a little further. I know that that Desire database was really popular several years ago. I haven't really seen any, use out of it in a while. Me personally, I haven't seen other people sharing it. And to your point, I don't think it's organizing it by your specific location or project type. It's really just more of a generalist kind of database that sits out there. So just to give everybody my personal opinion on it. But the other question that came in here, and I was thinking about this too, like I'm thinking about the project teams, the developers, the architects. They're just so overwhelmed. They're so busy. They certainly don't have time to find incentives. So you think maybe something like this, helps them. But even then, if you said go to this place and insert an address, even that sounds like a lot to these folks, right? That just seems overwhelmed to them because they're just, constantly having to, the housing shortage that we're having, it's just overwhelming everybody. Everybody's understaffed. There's not enough people. So the question that came in was one of the third party raters and energy analysis. And they said, well, what if, I'm the one pulling this, right? Like I'm doing this on behalf of the owner and the client. And their question kind of is, are they liable for the cost until the incentives come in? Or how do you all work with like the third party entities who are working with your tool on behalf of the clients?
No, that's a great question. And so what we do is we realize, and I mentioned we work with some prop tech companies, right? We're working with like Fannie Mae, or we're working with companies that will go in and have our database, similar to Green Home Institute, right? They have our database available. So we can kind of give back in a number of ways, right? So either we try to make this a value add to that organization, right? So it's some degree, as I mentioned, the HVAC installer, he's providing that as a value add or a differentiator for himself to go in and provide additional value to these building owners to say, hey, look, not only am I providing a great quality HVAC system that's making you more energy efficient, but on top of that, I went and found some incentives to help get a faster ROI on my particular system to get you going. And they really appreciate that. So that provides a significant a differentiator for him to go in and provide that value add to those project or building owners. The other thing that we have is that if you didn't want to provide necessarily so let's say that the report costs $500. Well, in this case, Green Home Institute's like, hey, let's pass the discount back to the people that utilize our site versus us kind of capturing that. So we have a number of ways you can do that. So and as a middle person, we can provide not only a value add to your specific whatever you're providing to your end customer, but you can also have some rev share in that, right? So we can provide a lower cost to you. And depending on if you want to pass that lower cost on to the building owner, or you just want to absorb that and say, look, I'm providing value add, or I'm going to charge the building owner. Well, in this case, let's say I'm going to charge them the $500 for the report, and I'm going to do those incentives. Well, we may be providing that on the back end to you at a lower cost. So then you're capturing a little bit on that too. And if you're go ahead and doing those application services, or you're allowing us to do that, there's also some rev share in that too. So if you're just introducing a building owner to this and you're saying, hey, look, I'll help you go ahead and apply for those and we'll take care of the whole process. You can just pass that on to us. We'll go ahead and apply that. And then all those captured funds that we get back, right? So let's say we save a building owner $50,000. you can get a portion of that $50,000 back in your pocket just by, connecting the dots.
Mhm, mhm. Um, the other question that came in here, well, it's about Texas. You're from Texas, you're in Texas. This individual said they're in Texas, so their their view is that the question is, are there some states that are more restrictive on green incentives? And so their question was like, say here in Texas, or maybe I can flip the question around and say, are there other states where you find this to be more valuable because you're going to find more incentives? So anything you can speak to on that, or again, is that sort of just a, hey, see what happens when you run a report?
So that's why we have that quick summary that's at no cost. You can go
Oh
there
yeah.
and kind of say, hey, just as a general search, are there incentives available in my area? And I don't have to pay anything for that. That's a great starting point.
Hmm.
There are definitely some states, though, and if you look at the building and performance standards that have come out, right, some of those are stricter in certain areas than others, right? You may go to a Colorado or a New York or a California type location and see that they have stricter regulations on being more eco-friendly, and in those cases they typically do have more incentives to help you get to that point.
Right.
So there definitely are certain locations that you will see more than others. But as a general rule of thumb, if you want, go to our website, look at the quick summary, see what's in your area, type in an address.
Yeah.
You can also reach out to us, right? So if you ever just want to say, look, I just don't quite know. I don't want to pay the $500. Can you help me? Can you help me more evaluate? Here's the locations. We have a lot of people that reach out as a starting point. And I think once they see the value that we've provided, it becomes a no-brainer very fast to say, look, this was a great value. They provided the data I need. They helped me capture the incentive. Why wouldn't I do that? And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I gave up on applying for the incentive because I said, look, I don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth to do this. But now there's a
Mhm.
team of people that I would have gladly, and I do the same thing for even, on our property taxes. I pay a service to go in and appeal my property taxes every year, and they take a
Mhm.
success fee out of that. I did that myself the first time, and it was a lengthy process. And I said, look, not worth my time and effort. And that's what we've seen in this industry as well. From the incentives application, the amount of time and effort, a lot of companies just say, look, this is an easy case for me to say, I know I'm not going to spend my time doing this. And instead of just
Yeah.
leaving that $35 billion cash on the table, sure, just send me a check, put it back in my pocket. I really don't have to do much of anything.
Yeah.
It becomes a very quick process once they see the success that we have.
Yeah. So the other question was project type. So clearly someone goes to our website, greenhomeinstitute.org/financial resources. They see the residential, they see the commercial multifamily. And then when you go into the commercial multifamily, you get to kind of have that drop down of like, what kind of commercial is it, right? Is it mixed use? Is it multifamily? Is it hospitality? But the question that came in is, why are you building out, or will there be a sort feature for new construction versus renovation? Because clearly there's going to be very different incentives. Like our utility companies here, in fact, they put out a manual for new construction. They put out a manual for multifamily, which lives in a weird world. They put out a manual for single family new construction, a manual for renovation. So is there a way that your site will be searchable so someone can say, look, I'm just only doing a renovation. I don't want to be bothered with all the other incentives. You're mute.
Sorry. Yeah, we definitely do. And let me see if I can share real quick one
Yeah,
more
yeah.
time.
Oh yeah, let me there you go. There you go.
All right. Let me share here one more time. It's one area that I kind of skipped over on with the report. So if you can see this here at the top of the report, what I can do is I can come up here and I can say, hey, so that's a great question. Is it a new building or existing building? And it will filter. So a
Ah,
lot of mine
I
was new
see.
construction. I can also come in and say, look, I know what utility I'm using, right? So I can come in here and actually say, you know what? I know I use, and again, I'm not that familiar with this area, but I know I use Mid-American Energy, right?
Right.
And in some cases, I mentioned how we're going to go and start filtering, right? So what we're bringing here is going to be the ability to go in and filter by the type of incentive that you're looking for, right? So hopefully that helps answer your questions. But yes, we are adding more of these capabilities to make this
Yeah.
process a lot more refined. So you're not having to go and skim through an entire report.
So on the technology side there, it looks like you only get to pick one, but what if you're trying to do like multiple technologies? You have to just keep rerunning it multiple times.
Yeah, so that's the filters that are coming up when I kind of mentioned the beginning of 2025. We're going to have
Right.
the ability to go in and add a lot more filtering in there and have checkboxes you go
Oh,
in and
okay,
select
that's right.
multiple
Yeah.
items, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're growing as well. So yeah, we're so excited to get the database out there. That was really kind of our first step. We've added some filters. We've changed kind of the look, feel. We've already taken a lot of feedback. But a lot of that feedback was how do we go in and add those different filters? Because I like in those cases, like I mentioned, the HVAC provider, where he's like, look, I know I'm just going to provide HVAC. The
Mm.
funny thing is now that he's been doing that, he goes, I've been providing these reports to my in customers of the building owners, and they're now curious at what other incentives can they capture, and because they are working on other projects as well. And so the funny thing is that part of that rev share that I talked about is now he's actually starting to capture a portion of the return on that, and so it does become a lucrative, and not that he's really trying to take advantage or anything like that, but because he's sharing this information, that this is another way that we can provide real value to people sharing our database
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
others.
All right. Well, Ben, I know we're at our time. I don't see any other questions, so I just want to thank our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, our nearly 400 members. We're almost there. If you can help us hit 400, and by becoming a member, you can head over to greenhomeinstitute.org/financial resources. And within your membership packet, you'll find special access links to Incentifine, where you can get those discounts on those incentive reports, both for multifamily, mixed use, commercial, and single family as well. So, Ben, great to have you out again. Just remind everybody, where can people go to learn more? I guess I mentioned it from the GHI website standpoint, but from your standpoint, where can people go to learn more? So,
Again, thank you very much, Brett, for having us on. I appreciate it. Hopefully, this information was valuable to a lot of your guests here. And yeah, you can go to incentifine.com. If you want to come to our website, you could find us there. There is a contact page. So if you do have questions and would like us to reach back out to you, please shoot us a note. You could also reach me. My email address is ben.northrup@incentifine.com. My last name is Northrup. But please feel free to reach out at any time, and we'd be happy to help you.
all right, Ben, thank you so much. Take care. Safe travels. Goodbye.